When writing and recording music using sensory percussion, I've taken a fairly standard approach of just capturing a performance and then mixing it from there. That makes the recording process really streamlined, and you can do it live, which is a really unique and engaging way to play electronic music. However, if you're interested in using sensory percussion as more of a production tool, there's a whole other side to sensory that we need to talk about. In this video, we're totally going to drop that performance mentality and embrace running sensor audio through sensory percussion throughout your production process. Let me show you what I mean. Here's a basic setup in Ableton with the sensory percussion plugin, and if you don't know what's going on here, Sunhouse has a great blog and template out, and I have a video on my YouTube page as well, which I can link to. But let's just talk about drum 2. This is my snare drum, so that's my sensor input being routed into the sensory percussion plugin. And then down here, the resulting audio is coming out. So if I record on both of these, and I just record a little bit, so down here, this is the resulting audio after sensory percussion. That's the actual audio of the sample, the snare sample I have. Up here, this is the actual, it's a little confusing, but this is actually the sensor audio. So if I temporarily just route this to the main output and I solo this, you can hear beautiful mesh head audio. And that's why we don't monitor it, we just send it into sensory percussion to do its magic. So what we're going to do is actually delete this audio, the resulting audio post sensory, and check out what happens. We're still hearing the resulting sensory percussion audio because this sensor audio is passing through the sensory percussion plugin in real time as we play or transport. So if I just loop a section here, you can even see it looks like I'm playing the drum, but I'm actually just playing this sensor audio through the plugin. This is a really big deal because it actually allows us to be very malleable with our sensory percussion setup. I could change the samples after the fact if I wanted to, but I don't. You know, I could change any parameters about this in real time. Like, I'm not stuck with what I had it set as before. This gets even deeper because you can add controllers after the fact. So let's say I have this, let me just keep this going. Let's say I wanted to have let's do a classic velocity on pitch of the snare sample. Let me show you something else that we can do that goes even further. We can actually manipulate this audio, the sensor audio, and have it be those changes reflected in sensory. So you can hear that if I change the gain of this audio region, it's reflected in that controller changing the pitch. You can go even further by quantizing the audio. Sometimes it's more effective to quantize the sensor audio as opposed to quantizing the resulting audio. If you manipulate the audio too much, particularly stretching it, you might notice that the sensory percussion starts responding really strangely, and that makes sense because sensory percussion is looking for timbres that it recognizes from your training, and this, let's just listen to this audio real quick from the sensor. Doesn't sound like anything we trained, so it might not respond super well, but let's find out. Let's just see. Some weird artifacts coming from there, but I've been surprised how much I can do with this and still get the results that I intended. Let's take this super flexible approach to produce a beat for this excerpt of a track I'm working on right now. So that's basically the loop right there. And just so you know, I have just one drum setup, and this will be kick, snare, and then some other stuff. And we're just going to record one at a time. So let's record a kick pattern. Cool. I'll go ahead and record it on this next pass. Nice. I already am hearing that was a little behind, so I'm just going to do like normal audio editing stuff. But I'm editing the sensor audio, which will be running through the plugin in real time. So let's see if that change made a difference. Nice. Still a little glitchy, and we got a tiny unintended artifact there. That's fine. No big deal. Just so you know, I have a velocity controller on pitch of the sample, and what I wanted to happen here was for the pitch to kind of go boop 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 boom, and I'm not quite getting that same effect. So it could be as easy of a fix as just applying a ramp at the beginning. Nice. And of course, I can edit the parameters of the controller in here as well. Nice. Very cool. Let's go ahead and record a snare drum track in the same style. Great, I'm totally cool with that. So these aren't perfect performances, but I think what I'm trying to illustrate here is the just how flexible you can be with a more of a producing mindset. Tighten it up a little bit like this. Good enough. And I kind of wish I had put a backbeat over here. That's funny. Let's see what we can do to change this, because it didn't come across quite as I intended it to. We could try our fade trick. That's kind of cool. So I think what I want to do is try to get this whole buzz audio region to end before the downbeat. So that could just be a matter of shrinking it in. That's pretty sweet. I wonder what it'd sound like if I did a little fade here. No, not as cool. Awesome. Ah, yes, I forgot about this. I'm wondering if we could do the same trick over here. That's pretty sweet. So I just brought this sensitivity down to make sure that the backbeat's the same pitch every time. A wonderful thing to be able to do after the fact using this workflow. So in some cases it actually is going to be more effective to record your post sensory percussion audio. So for instance, this little buzz over here is not quite the effect that I wanted, so I'm going to just go ahead and record it. So I just recorded that and I deactivated the sensor audio because since I am working with the main beat in real time going through the Sensory Percussion plugin, we don't want to have printed audio post-sensory plus the sensor audio generating it again, because then we'll get some weird phasing stuff. So that's a nice way to just make sure we only get one thing. And so now that I have the original audio, or the final audio, I wanted this to be more of like a buzz roll swell. So I think if I just did this, it would give me the result I'm looking for. Yeah. Now that I'm hearing that and liking how that sounds, I think I want to do the same thing with this little region here. So let's go ahead and record that. Cool. And then this is the only part that I actually want to use the final audio with. So I'm just going to deactivate that and then isolate that little buzz. And maybe in this case, what would actually be cool is to warp it. Could go the other way, actually. Wow, interesting. So, just for some spice, let's record some stuff on drum 3. I have some finger cymbal samples, and I'm using a velocity controller on pitch, and it's quantized to give us a nice little kind of melodic element. Let's just see what happens. Cool. Because this is a cycle, it's extremely unlikely that it's going to sound the same every time we pass through, which could be a cool thing depending on your perspective, or it could be a huge problem. For example, let's just loop this first little figure. You can see here, because it's just 3 notes, and we have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 transients. If you wanted to have more control over this, what you could do is bring in some external MIDI input. I'm not going to do this right now, but basically you would set up a MIDI track that inputs into Sensory Percussion, learn it here, and then you could assign it to the reset button or the arrows or something, so you can make sure it sounds the same every time you pass it through. I think these are a little too short, so I might change this controller, which was changing the length of the samples. And I'm using timbre center to edge on panning. Something that's really cool about having tail enabled is that if you're modulating pan, the samples will stay wherever they are panned. And I could exaggerate that more by bringing this sensitivity in so that it goes more extreme. Seems a little less. Cool, that's nice. Something else that would make a huge difference with this specific example is changing the range parameters on the velocity controller that is controlling pitch. And it's still generating that velocity controller from the audio in real time, but we can tailor that to be exactly what we want it to be after the fact, which I find really cool. Another option that's available to us is switching kits dynamically, and you could use this to sort of audition different setups or something, but I think this could be creatively used as a sort of fill. So what I did is I copied this whole kit over to this kit and I reversed everything. We could actually switch the kit so that everything is reversed momentarily and sequence that as a part of our production. So, sitting with this for a second, sitting with this for a minute, I really like where it's at. However, I don't love having the finger cymbal stuff in there all the time. And obviously, for a longer track, I would probably just, do a normal workflow where I just don't have these regions happening. But for the sake of illustration, we could also use effects to create this change for us. And I'm going to use CV tools because I love CV tools, and I'm going to put it, so this is on the sensor input channel for the finger cymbals, and what I'm actually going to do is grab the utility object and just map it to the gain. So what this is going to do is bring the gain down as this LFO goes down, which means that sensory percussion is going to get less signal, and when it's low, it's not going to get anything at all. So let's see what that sounds like. Notice that that's a pretty fundamental difference from using the same type of thing on the drum output channel, which I could totally do. But if I was doing that when the gain is down, you wouldn't hear the cymbals ringing out at all. So this is an example of it being more advantageous to use effects and automation on the sensor audio before it hits the plugin.